Here's something that caught my attention recently. I was having breakfast and noticed an ad on the side of my orange juice carton. I took a picture. It appears here. Now, it's not unusual to see promotions on the sides of cartons and packaging, but usually is promoting another flavor or another variety of the same product, or maybe a different product but within the same brand family. Or once in a while you'll see promotions for charitable causes on things like this. But this was the first time I actually recalled what appeared to be paid advertising space for a completely different company on the side of the carton. It makes sense if Chuck E. Cheese has determined, for example, that their audience is the same audience of the people that are drinking this particular brand of juice. But what this really points out, as I have said before, is how desperate marketers are to find new places to put their message. Today's topic is internet marketing. I want to provide a high-level overview of what's going on with internet marketing, talk about some of the definitions of various things, because it can get very confusing with terminology of different things, and provide my thoughts as it relates to this form of marketing. I can remember back when I first started teaching part-time. It was the mid-1990s, so I know a lot of you were probably born right around that time. Now, the internet had actually been around for 20 years or so before then, but it was mostly something for government and academics to share research. But it was really only in the early 1990s when it started becoming more of a commercial use application. And I remember in class one day wanting to actually demonstrate the internet to my students. So I had another guy that I work with come in to my classroom. We had to make sure that there was an Ethernet port, and we did have one, but nobody really knew how to use the internet yet. And this guy came in and gave a demonstration of the World Wide Web. That's WWW. And everyone just sat there, myself included, and we were kind of mesmerized as to what this thing called the internet was all about. Students were asking questions like, how do you go back and forth on web pages? And what things can you click on? And how do you type in a web address? And what is a browser? And I know we had a lot of fun. People would come up and try it out on their own, and they'd take the mouse and they'd click around. Of course, there weren't as many websites back then, but it was just a very eye-opening experience for us. But it really wasn't that long ago. It's really been within most of your lifetime that the internet has come into being. And I remember when I first began doing a lot of marketing consulting in 2004, that's the very same year that Jeff Zuckerberg started Facebook. Now again, I know most of you were young kids then, but the point is, when I started my consulting practice, social networking didn't even exist yet. But then a few years later comes companies like Twitter, and then come companies like Pinterest, and it just keeps moving forward rapidly. And if you take a look at the social media landscape today, look at all of the platforms and networking companies and things that are out there. It's just absolutely mind-boggling to try to even keep track of what all the different companies do or monitor what the next big trend is going to be. And my point here is kind of this. The landscape of internet marketing is moving so quickly, and the technology is advancing so rapidly that it's really difficult for marketers to really figure out how to use it and how to keep up. And it seems like right at the time that marketers start making inroads with how to advertise on one medium or one site, things change, fads move on, and pretty soon the world is moving on in a different direction at about the same time as we really figure out how to use the existing platforms and things like that. It's really, really crazy. In the early days, and by that I mean just about a decade ago, marketers really didn't know how to do internet marketing. A lot of it was very unsophisticated stuff, just putting up banners on websites or having pop-up ads or things like that. And all they really knew how to do was to take what they'd done for a long time in television or radio or on print and put it on the internet. It's kind of like when the first televisions came out, all that marketers knew how to do was to take things that had worked on radio and put visuals to it and put it on television. If you look at early television commercials, you kind of think sometimes, what were they thinking? Well, they really weren't thinking. It's that they didn't know what to do. Big trend recently in internet marketing is video. Video is the fastest growing segment of internet marketing. It's grown about 54% so far in 2012. It grew 42% last year, and there's really no end in sight. Now, sometimes people complain about video ads on YouTube or other types of advertising on Google or whatever. But remember, these are free products. How is a company supposed to make money from you by giving their product away? Well, how they make it is by selling advertising space and coming up with other opportunities for marketers. Another interesting trend is something that Huffington Post Live is trying. With the new Huffington Post website, it is an online video network, and it runs about 12 hours per day of live video streaming of not really breaking news, but it's more commentary and things. But what's unique here, that is instead of doing commercial breaks during the news program, or instead of having videos run before you see the content, they're having sponsors purchase the naming rights to the various news segments. Here's a way to think of it. Think of the 10 o'clock news in your local community. What if it were actually the General Motors weather report, the Nabisco sports show, the Procter & Gamble news, and there would be tie-ins and signage on the set itself to convey what was going on. This is something that they are experimenting with at Huffington Post, and we'll see how it goes. It's a very unique idea, however, and one that maybe will cut through the types of clutter that are typically associated with internet advertising. Another thing about internet advertising is that it's moving from the computer to mobile platforms. That's a challenge that Facebook has had recently in trying to figure out how to move the marketing and the advertising opportunities more to the mobile platform. This is very significant, though. And if you think about it, what are the two things that you almost always have on your person, or that you never leave your home without? One is your set of keys, and the other one is your phone. Well, it makes sense that as more and more people turn to their smartphones for their way of interacting with the internet, that the advertising and marketing opportunities would gravitate towards that as well. But again, I point out to you, this landscape is shifting so quickly. It's very difficult to even have a marketing presentation on it, because by the time you're seeing this, there are new trends and new things that are happening. That's why I'm going to focus more on definitions and making sure that you understand the different concepts about internet marketing, and maybe looking at some examples that companies are following in terms of strategy and things like that. That said, look at definitions. When we talk about internet marketing, as the name implies, it's creating promotions that reach new customers. This is what most websites do. If you go to CNN or to foxnews.com, or if you're looking at YouTube or some other sites, they're putting things out there, organizations are, to attract new customers for their products and services. It can be ads, video ads, as I've mentioned. It can be ads at the bottom of pages. It can be banners. It can be a variety of things. But remember, it's not just about things aimed at new customers. Internet marketing isn't just one way. For example, like an ad directed at you. It also happens through two-way interactions. And think about things where you interact with companies that you have existing relationships with. Maybe your school, or maybe a bank, or maybe you buy an airline ticket and you're out on their website checking your flight status or things like that. Well, what that means is there are additional opportunities for those organizations that you already are a customer of to leverage their brand and try to create a larger share of wallet by marketing other products and services to you. So always remember, it's about new customers, but about existing customers as well. But that is internet marketing. When we talk about social networking or social media, what we really mean is using third-party websites to post your promotions and to build relationships with customers. I'm talking about things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, and many, many others. Now, social networking is where you're connected to others who share friendships or interests, and you can share that information with them. However, the real impetus behind social networking isn't just putting an ad out there. It's hoping that others will begin sharing it, and through word of mouth and referrals and other things, that information will spread. Savvy marketers know how to build relationships this way by using things like the like button on Facebook. When I click on like, my friends see that, and that can be very, very powerful. So can word of mouth and other things. And so just remember, I'm going to use Facebook for an example, but social networking really isn't just buying an ad and putting it out there, but it is creating the life beyond just the ad through the interactions and the referrals and things that result from it. Mobile marketing. When we talk about mobile marketing, it is things that happen on your phone. And again, this is really where the future is with marketing at this point in time. Again, it's because you always have your phone with you. Mobile marketing then would be things like when you play some games, the Farmville or Angry Birds or whatever, and you have ads there. It can also be texts that are targeted specifically to you, and many other things. I've worked with a company before, and they specialize in text message marketing. This is an opt-in marketing approach, which I'll talk about that in a moment. But it's where customers can text a message to a certain code, and now you've opted into a list, and the organization can send you promotions when it's opportune to do so. Let me give you an example. I know that Papa John's has done a lot with this. You text a code to Papa John's, putting yourself on their list, so when they have promotions and things, they can send them to you. Then let's say it's a rainy Wednesday afternoon, and for whatever reason, business is slow. They're not selling a lot of pizza during that period of time. It's very easy for them then to blast back out a text message coupon to customers saying, large cheese pizza, $5 for the next 2 hours, or whatever it is. Then you simply use the text that you got on your phone as the coupon to get your pizza. So the key, again, with mobile marketing is it happens on your phone. Who knows what's around the corner? But I firmly believe with the speed with which things are moving that it won't be long before we move to a whole nother platform beyond mobile phones. In other words, I fully expect that someday we'll look back on this era and think, do you remember that crazy time when everyone had to carry the phone with them to access things? There will be other ways of doing it. One of them is Google Project Glass. I'll provide some information about that separate from this presentation, but within this unit. It's just fascinating to look at what the future might hold. Then there's viral marketing. Viral marketing is when a message spreads like a virus. So think of it like the flu or a cold or something. You don't really do anything to spread it, per se. it just kind of takes on a life of its own and spreads, and it's actually hard sometimes to track where things actually came from or how they got transmitted. Well, that's really what viral marketing is. The message spreads through social networking, through word of mouth, through video clips, through text messages, gaming, and more. When you put a video on YouTube, that's just putting something out there. But if 2 million people discover it and begin passing it around and sharing it, then you can say on viral. Now our focus here again is on internet marketing, so I want to talk about some of the key things to think about regardless of the specific type of advertising or promotion you're doing. And the first one is to focus on strategy. Make sure you understand why you need the internet advertising and exactly what it is you're trying to do with it. I have visited and consulted with a number of companies, and they talk about they want to do internet advertising, but they really haven't defined exactly what it is that they want to do. As a result, they're not always as effective with it. In this respect, internet advertising should really be no different than you approach any other form of advertising or marketing. You would never launch a public relations campaign without knowing why and what your goals are. You would never decide to advertise on a certain television program or in a certain magazine without clearly understanding the goals for doing so and what you're trying to accomplish. Same thing for direct mail and all the other forms of promotion. Well, it's no different with internet marketing. But again, what I see is companies kind of skipping past this step, just making the assumption that they need to have their marketing on the internet. That may be true and maybe not. It depends on what the strategy is. Companies themselves need to make sure they stay focused on site design. When you look at an internet site itself, it's kind of like going to a store, really. Think of when you walk into a store, you're evaluating your perceptions of what's going on. You're looking to make sure you can find what it is you want to find. And you're forming opinions about things by what that store is like. Well, that's really how a website is as well. So when you're putting your marketing out on websites, you need to make sure that the site itself is congruent, not only in terms of content, but in terms of the ambiance and the brand image that you're trying to convey. Make sure it's a site that is working to generate traffic. What happens a lot with the internet itself is companies will spend all types of resources and time and money and obsess over the specific things that are on their site and how it works and the functionality and etc. And they kind of forget, well, the real goal is to get people to that site itself. Because what good is an internet site if people aren't there? So when you're considering marketing on sites, make sure it's not just a great site, but also look at the traffic patterns and look at the demographics and things of the people that are going to that site in as much as you can. And the other thing is making sure that your internet marketing is integrated with all of the other communications and promotion that you do. Very likely, people not only see your ads on a particular internet site, but they see your ads in other venues as well, or they see the results of your sales or your public relations effort, or they see your sales promotion effort and things. And the point is, all of these things go together. Internet marketing should not be approached as a standalone tactic, but rather as a tactic that fits together with all the other components of your promotional strategy. But I want to veer to email marketing just for a moment, and this, the next couple of slides could just as easily be in the unit on direct marketing, but I want to talk about them here. There's a couple different ways to approach email marketing. One is opt-in. That means that the customer has given you permission, they've given you their email address, and they have indicated that they would like to receive your promotions. From a marketing perspective, this is typically a better group of customers because it's someone that has said they'd like to receive the things from you. However, oftentimes you're dealing with low numbers because so few customers do that. Opt-in would be, for example, when you visit certain websites and they are asking if you want to receive their newsletters or other promotions or things like that. You would have to check the box to say, yes, I want to receive this stuff. But again, the challenge is not many people do that. The other way to approach it is really just the opposite, and it's called opt-out. And that's where you assume that everyone is in the bucket that you're marketing to unless they take their name off the list. Now this leads to much larger potential numbers of people to market to. But you cannot make the assumption that these people have any interest whatsoever in what it is you're promoting. The example here would be when you go to a website and the little box is already clicked about, do you want to receive additional information or promotions or things like that. And you would have to manually click yourself out of the promotions. That's opt out. So again, higher numbers usually with this, but the degree to which the customers have any type of affinity towards you is lower. Let me put it like this. Let's say I ask all of my online students let's say I was selling something and ask all of my online students to sign your name on a list if you want to receive my promotion for a certain item. I might only get a few of you who actually do that, but those who did, I can make some assumptions that you probably are interested in what I have to say. The other approach would be to just tell you are all automatically on my marketing list and will be receiving things from me. If, however, you want to remove your name from the list, you may do so. I can guarantee you what would happen is most of you wouldn't remove yourself from the list. You would just continue to receive the promotions, but it really wouldn't be something that you're probably interested in. So again, there's two different schools of thought on which works best. But the key with email marketing is to make sure you're providing something of value. Studies show that people don't just want promotional content, or they don't want information that's just trying to sell them things. They'd rather have tips and more practical, useful information. I've been involved with a lot of e-newsletters, and the rule of thumb isn't, when we're working with a bank, for example, on creating an e-newsletter, we're not talking about here's our great products and here's our great interest rates and things like that. That's too self-serving. Rather, what customers would like information on are things like, tips for protecting your identity, or tips for keeping yourself on budget when you're on vacation, or things like that. Those are perhaps silly examples, but it's just trying to illustrate the point of what people usually want is information, not a hard sell promotion. Let's look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of internet marketing. Some of the advantages are, very individualized messages, almost like direct marketing, where you can hone in on the type of customer demographic that you're looking for and customize things to people. It's the relatively low cost, unlike forms of advertising where you're buying media and having to print and develop all kinds of things. If it's direct mail, certainly you have postage and printing costs. If it's traditional advertising, you have a lot of the creative costs and the cost to print things, etc., etc. Internet marketing can be relatively low cost. And because customers interact with the internet 24/7, your reachability is also 24/7. If I advertise a particular radio program or television program, my reachability is really only people that happen to be, engaged at that particular time. Same thing with publications and things like that. But with internet, you have a chance of reaching them 24/7. I mentioned the importance of making sure that things are well integrated with your other forms of promotion, and it's relatively simple to do that. Oftentimes, a lot of people forget to do it, but the act of doing it is usually not very challenging. And then there's just the level of engagement. People engage with the internet unlike they do with any other media, with radio, television, newspaper, or whatever. So there's the opportunity to try to engage your customers with the marketing that you're doing on the internet. Some of the disadvantages. One of them is clutter. There's just so much out there, not just on the internet, but otherwise. I mean, goodness, we have ads on orange juice cartons now. It just shows you how many people are chasing every place your eyeballs look to put their marketing message. And that's especially true on the internet. Sometimes things get so cluttered that you don't really know them or pay attention to them. A lot of times people see internet marketing as an annoyance. Those darn ads that you have to watch before you can view your content, where sometimes the web page will load and then it will appear to jump around a little bit because an ad is scrolling down from the top or something like that. Sometimes it can be so annoying you actually damage your brand. You might have a good company and a good ad itself, but if it's not positioned correctly on the internet, people can get annoyed with your company just because it's causing them, it's delaying their interaction with the content that they really want to see, or things like that. There are certainly privacy concerns. You can understand who's, you as a marketer, you know a lot more about who's looking at your ads and how they're engaging with it and things like that, unlike most other forms of advertising. And many consumers are concerned about that. There can be challenges to measure. Now, on one hand, the opportunity for measurement is just very, very rich, because you can be looking at, the click-throughs, number of people that click on a particular ad, how long they stay on certain ads, which things they do, and it can be very effective from that point of view. But one of the problems is that there are a lot of companies popping up that are trying to trick you into clicking on things that you may not have intended. Now, kind of the background on this, so many internet ads, the advertisers pay by the number of people that click on the ad. So there are unscrupulous companies that have popped up that will do things to try to trick you into clicking on things. For example, I was visiting with a student of mine recently, and he was explaining an ad that he got from, and it was an internet ad that he got from Target. But when he clicked on it, it didn't go to anything to do with Target. It went to some other company. And as we talked about it, we realized it probably wasn't Target that had anything to do with that ad. There was some other company that was trying to trick you into thinking that it was Target. So when you clicked on it, you would go to another website, and that would count as a hit on that website, and they could charge that company for the hits that they're getting. Kind of hard to explain online, but just the point is there are still challenges to the measurement of things. And something else that's going to get more confusing over time is that the way that domain names work, your company name .com, there are some changes in the works with this. The .com is the gold standard as far as businesses are concerned. You want to have your company name at .com. Now I know there's .net and .org if you're a nonprofit organization, .edu if you're a school, and things like that. But essentially what we're coming to is the point where it could be things like .pepsi, .coke, or the whatever the name of the company is, which can make it a little bit more challenging. The idea of domain names themselves, I think, are going to get very cluttered and very confusing as well. Finally, I want to talk just a little bit about social networking and social marketing and how companies should approach it. This is especially relevant for small businesses that are just getting into social networking. And the first thing to point out is that, like with internet marketing, focus on strategy first. Just like a company wouldn't plunge into a direct mail program or create a brochure or do anything else without having some kind of a goal in mind, a company also shouldn't just dive into social networking without having a strategy and knowing why. In the end, social media is just another communication channel, albeit a very different, very rich, more personal, and perhaps more engaging one. But it is still just a communication channel. It's also important to focus on content, not the technology itself. I can teach someone to tweet in about 20 minutes, but knowing what to say and how to engage and motivate followers, that's a whole nother story. Anyone with a computer and an internet connection can blog, but not everyone knows how to promote the blog and to gain readers and to build credibility and spark discussion, which is the point of blogs. So in other words, it's too easy to get consumed by the how of the technology at the expense of understanding what it is you're going to do and the why behind it. Now, speaking of challenges, social media is actually work, and it takes a lot of time to do. If you think it's a snap to write a relevant blog, or to come up with a daily tweet, or to keep your Facebook page updated, I say try it. I guarantee you'll realize that it's more effort than you've ever thought possible. I also say if you're not sure whether or not you want to do it, give it a try and see if you like it. That's one of the nice things about social media. It's the ability to learn it and to test your appetite and tenacity for it without others necessarily seeing it. For example, when I talk to people that are interested in setting up a blog or beginning to tweet for their company, the first thing I say is, before you actually do it, why don't you do your blog and weekly or daily or however you do it, but don't actually publish it, because you want to see for yourself, is this really going to be realistic and doable? When it comes to social networking, people have big dreams, but then they quickly realize with all the work that it takes, they're not able to really keep up with it and do it well. And you can embarrass yourself if you, for example, start a blog and make a big deal out of it and then never have time to update it, or begin tweeting but then realize you really don't have time to tweet. And that's my next point. Be committed to it. If you do try it and you do flip the switch and actually activate it, stick with it, because few things mess with a brand more than content that's old or outdated. If you've ever seen a blog that hasn't had a post for months, you wonder, did that person or that company, did the company go out of business? Did the person just give up? What happened? Why would anyone follow it that only tweets twice a year? Or why would you pay attention to a LinkedIn profile that's not been changed since it was created? So if you're going to do it, be committed and do it often. Remember that it's not really about you, but about your customers and your prospects. Social media is actually a great way to learn and gather feedback and really listen to the needs of others. Quite honestly, even companies that don't use social media should be monitoring their conversations and what's said about their company, just so they know what's going on out there. But it's not just about you promoting your goods and services. It is about listening to customers and engaging them in dialogue and building relationships with them. And finally, don't do social networking at the expense of other marketing tactics. Honestly, I have seen some small business owners get so consumed with social media, in addition to everything else they have to do to run the business, that they overlook or they neglect many other things that might be a more effective way of promoting their organization. An example would be a small business owner who obsesses over their blog pages and spend a tremendous amount of time, worrying about blogging and time-consuming things like that, and maybe only has a very few followers. When you step in it, you think there's probably a lot of other things that could be done that would be more effective than worrying about the blog. So just make sure, if you're going to do it, that you have the time and tenacity to do it, and that you're not neglecting other marketing tactics for it. Don't fall into that trap. This concludes this unit on internet marketing.